see your mother. You were only given one, go see your mother. And you know that you will never have another. Go see your mother. Go see your mom.
Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia. This is my mother, Ima. Hey, Ima.
Hey, sweetheart.
Ah, man, what a week.
This is why I don't like these videos. I prefer to have an audio.
I understand, Ima.
It's making me self-conscious. You know, there's this oh my goodness, on the I play like one of these like word games, and one of the ads that pops up is this woman who's supposed to be a dermatologist that out of Miami, and she has, you know, they built up this whole thing that she has this very simple thing that women can do to erase your wrinkles. You don't have to have wrinkles or, you know, laugh lines, around her. She goes like wrinkles around your jowls, and then she says, just listen to my podcast. And it's something very. They have this whole thing, something very simple any woman could do. And so it's like, okay, so what is it? Well, first you have to listen to the podcast. And when we get on these things, it's like, well, first let me tell you something about myself. First, let me tell you about my practice. First, let me tell you this, let me tell you that. And it's like, just tell me what is the thing that I'm supposed to do, or that business about 5 foods that you should never, ever eat. They're poisonous to you. So you go, well, what are they? You click them on. And again, 20 minutes into the presentation, they're still talking about themselves and their practice. It's like, can you just give me just name the 5 foods, okay? Please, very simple.
Have you ever heard the term, there's a sucker born every minute? I think you are reborn incessantly to go ahead and listen to these YouTube videos and podcasts, because we've talked about this on the show multiple times, about how you keep on getting duped into these stupid little things. But I think it's important to understand that, why is that actually? Why did you?
Don't tell me about being duped. I mean, I bought a great bridge right here in Brooklyn for a big bargain list the other week.
I'm curious though. Joking aside, I want to kind of maybe dive into this because, why is it? Do you think you get duped? Why do you feel so gullible for so many people, or why do you give people so much of a chance? Like, where did that stem from?
I'm getting less like that, but I remember when we first got our cell phones, and they started with all these like ads and everything. At first, like things sounded pretty interesting because they relate to a problem that you have. Like, for example, many people, middle-aged people and older, have arthritis.
Yeah,
it's a very serious health problem. Oops, wait a minute. And so when you hear that there are foods that are, aggravating your arthritis, it's right away. You're hopeful. You're hopeful. I mean, having arthritis is painful, and so when you're in pain and you want to get well, unfortunately, you're willing to try to at least listen to any suggestion at that point.
Yeah, but shouldn't you kind of maybe listen to something that's more credible than some random person online? Like, what makes you?
These guys sound so convincing. I mean, they come on with all their credentials and their medical degrees and everything, and they sound so very, very convincing. They sound convincing. They really do, until you realize, like 15 minutes into the podcast, like, okay, I mean, you and I got duped one time like that.
Yeah, one time, and I haven't ever since, where I learned my lesson.
Listened to something about it was about the economy.
It was economical, yeah.
Yeah, and it really sounded very, very convincing. And we were listening to it for, how long did we listen to it for? 20 minutes?
Must have been 20, 30 minutes. It was a whole long thing. And I think eventually we realized it was just baloney. And then ever since then, whenever I listen to anything, I kind of keep a key eye and ear to anything that sounds too good to be true, and realize that it's probably BS.
There was one time though, I'm gonna get kind of duped. It was this nutritionist was talking about turmeric and ginger and cinnamon, that these spices are known to reduce inflammation, especially among people that have arthritis. So he was selling these capsules where these spices were concentrated. And so I think that was worth a try. And I bought like 1 month's supply, and saw at the end of the month it didn't do any good. It didn't make any difference.
Did your parents ever get duped
Good question.
when they were younger? Not when they were older, because I know that, but like when they were younger, you know.
You know something? I don't think so. My parents, well, having grown up, you know, having grown up in poverty, and realizing, to them the value of a, well, we say dollar now, in their days a nickel. The value of a nickel was the value. They watched their pennies. So I can't think of any time where they actually, not to my knowledge, got duped. Now my father, he didn't get duped, but it was when Shackley came out with their Shackley came out with these products that were supposed to be chemical free and more, like vitamins and even cosmetics that were chemical free for the time. And this was during the 60s and 70s. So my father decided to sell Shackley on the side to make a little extra money, and it was okay. It wasn't, and it was it was a decent product. When I was in Crown Heights, there was a gentleman that lived in our apartment building, a from man with a family, and he was selling Shackley. And I looked at some of the cosmetics. And I liked the cosmetics because he had a whole line of cosmetics that were more for people, say, with olive skin like I have.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like, usually most, I guess, if you go according to like this, they have this whole beauty thing of where people are divided into categories according to the seasons. And whatever season you are, those are the colors connected to that season, which you look good in. Like I think light complexion, blonde hair, blue-eyed people would be considered spring. So spring colors, green, blues, they would look good. These people look good in spring. Your older sister is definitely spring. She looks good in blues and greens. I'm more like autumn, where purples, oranges, reds, browns, rustic colors. So cosmetic wise, people who are more like autumn look good more like in coral lipstick as opposed to bright red lipstick. More like maybe purple eyeshadows, or darker, like more darker type colors. So I bought his cosmetics, and I was very pleased with them.
So I guess my other question would be, what about your sisters, or when you were younger, did you fall for any scams?
Oh God. Well, there was it's at the Clearing Publishers House, where they have that thing. If you buy their magazines, they enter you in their sweepstakes, whatever.
Yeah.
I think your father did it for a while and then said, forget it. After a couple of years, he canceled the subscription. But there were some good magazines, though. Very interesting magazines. We got U.S. News and World Report, which in the beginning when we got it was a pretty decent magazine. But then as the years went by, they became kind of anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell that they started to be leftist leaning and very Palestinian leaning. And it was, after a while, we just canceled our subscription to them. But I'm thinking of my sisters, if we ever fell for anything. No, not that I remember, but I remember in some of the books I read, there was this book I was reading about that takes place during like the 1960s, and in this, it was a fictional book. I think the woman who wrote it, I think it was semi-autobiographical. It was about a 12-year-old girl, and one of the things that she's concerned about is, of course, the changes her body's going through, and she realizes that she's kind of on the, how can I say it, the flat chested side. So at that time, there was this, it had to be it was a scam, I think. It was called the Mark Eden Developer. And it was an advertisement in a lot of the newspapers and magazines. You send them money, and he sends you this thing that's supposed to help your breasts get bigger. So in the book, in this fictional book, the 12-year-old girl, gets scammed. She takes her babysitting money and she sends it to this company, this Mark Eden Developer, and it's a cup on a spring. I'll leave it to your imagination what you're supposed to do with it. Of course, to her disappointment, she finds it doesn't help at all.
It's actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
So, because I'm trying to remember any scams that happened when I was a kid. And I think what it is also not, it's just as a kid, you're very vulnerable because you don't know enough. Like, I remember it's not even just scams, but basic marketing where, like, when I was a kid, Tati showed me the concept of, like, if you put it under 99 cents, like $3.99 or $4.99, it looks cheaper than what it is.
Right.
And that's what they do. Do you remember any stuff?
That's a psychological type thing. Yeah.
Do you remember anything like that when you were growing up that they no longer do, or they became maybe illegal to do?
Oh, that's a good question. Illegal. I'm trying to think. Some that might have become illegal. Not anything that comes to mind, but I remember when I was in 12th grade, we were discussing the legalities of advertising, and many of us didn't realize it. But our the sociology teacher, it was 12th grade sociology, was telling us that legally you cannot show anybody. At that time, I don't know what's going on now with advertising, because the internet has its own rules now, but this was television advertising. And in television advertising, you could not show anybody actually drinking an alcoholic drink. It was against the law. Advertisers couldn't do that. And you could show them pouring the drink. You could show them picking it up and talking about it. You could show them starting to bring it to their lips, but you honestly could not film anybody actually drinking the drink itself. And we were all surprised but it was true. Yeah. And when she pointed this out to us, I was watching advertisements on television. I said, that's right. It never occurred to me. There was also something that they came up with in movie theaters called the subliminal messages. You heard about it. Where they would put in the film, they would put one frame of, say, popcorn. And it came up, it was subliminal because as the film was running, as the different I say photographs in the film, what's that called I'm looking for? Snapshots in the film. Everyone knows what a movie film is. A movie film is
No, you got it right. You're good. And they clipped a picture of McDonald's or Coca-Cola, and within that split-second clip, they realized that McDonald's and Coca-Cola was, people were more inclined to use it, and they made it illegal to do that because of the implied subliminal advertisement. We've mentioned that before.
Yeah.
I guess
or the one they find in the stores, the grocery stores, they said when they played Italian music, there was suddenly an increase in the amount of spaghetti and tomato sauce that was being purchased.
Do you have certain brands that you always buy instead of generic? Or you always go generic?
I usually go for the cheap, whatever's kosher, whatever the cheapest.
Cheapest, that's what you go for. Cheap and kosher. Okay.
My shopping habits are very simple. Where's the cheapest?
Where's the cheapest? Okay. Was there any time that you splurged on yourself, or it just never happened?
When it comes to coffee.
Coffee.
That's the luxury.
That's your luxury.
Yes. I like to buy the higher end coffees. Like I like to buy beans. I like to buy whole beans because I do have a grinder. My sister gave me a coffee grinder, so it's nice to get whole beans and grind it fresh and brew it. And so I get the like I try to get the higher end, nicer coffees. 8 o'clock. Please me. This is no endorsement. If anyone's listening to this, we do not have coffee sponsors. We're not endorsing anything. Oh,
Yeah.
Clips of coffee.
Clips of coffee. Yeah, that was a good endorsement for a while.
Yeah.
But
Are they putting it out in any stores?
it's not in stores yet. To get a product into stores it takes a lot of time and effort. But what people have been able to do lately is just been able to make their own product, store it at their own location or warehouse, and then just ship it. So it's a little easier. Did Tati ever have a brand that he always liked getting? I know he was very particular with various things.
He was not a coffee drinker.
No, he never was a coffee drinker.
Yes.
I know that.
In fact, one time he was complaining about my addiction to coffee, and I asked him if that was grounds for divorce.
That's
the topic I came up with.
What?
Jokes.
Yeah, great, Emma. That's what I love to hear. It's fantastic.
Especially corny music jokes.
Oh,
alto lunch.
Alto lunch.
In another hour.
Oh.
You better be natural, or you'll be flat.
Cute. Did you have like a go-to joke that you had when you were like in high school? Like, you know how it is, everyone hangs out, like you always have like a
not unless I wanted to be totally ostracized. I mean, I was semi-ostracized, but not totally ostracized.
What do you mean you were semi-ostracized?
I wasn't in the in crowd.
No, but you had your own friends, right? You had your own group of friends.
Thank God, yeah.
And so that's your own crowd. That's what matters.
There was one of my neighbors who had the nerve, and one of the mothers in the neighborhood who had the nerve to say to me, "What do kids like you do who are on the outs? I guess you have your own crowd of friends that are also on the outs."
But out of curiosity, was that just like the 1950s way of handling things? Like they just had no filter and would just say the most dumbest, nastiest things and expect there to be like a reaction? Like, just out of curiosity, what's with you people? Like,
when it came to social graces and psychology, we have to say it like we said. That was a generation that was raised. Went from they were born during World War I.
Yeah.
During the 1920s, their parents were mostly, for the most part, very poor, struggling immigrants. Then they were hit with a major depression. Then they were hit with a major world war. So they really didn't have time to work on social skills. They were too busy working on survival skills.
So my question... hold on a second. I was thinking, can you repeat yourself? You kind of broke up a little bit.
Yeah, so did you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Good.
So what I was saying was, when it came to, I guess, that generation, when you were growing up, what did you think of them when you were younger?
Ooh. Like all teenagers, I thought my parents were totally stupid. I thought they didn't understand what I was going through, which in many respects, there was a very big, well, I think we mentioned this before in one of our podcasts, that when I was in high school, there was a lot of discussion at the time about the quote unquote generation gap, because there was a tremendous generation gap, because the world before World War II and the world after World War II were like night and day.
Yeah.
The technological advances were like unbelievable. Like all of a sudden, television, that was like going to the moon.
Yeah, we've discussed that. We've talked about these advancements and everything.
Right. And the world economy, especially in the United States, an economy that was the best economy of all history. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like your father and I would reminisce about dinners, how many times a week we ate steak, how many times a week we ate veal or lamb. Oh my gosh. And you go to the stores now, you look and, forget veal, forget lamb. I mean, I went to the store the other day. I think I saw a lamb for like $22 a pound.
Wow.
I said, forget it. You can't even touch. I don't even know who can afford it.
Yeah. I don't know either. It's just part of life. It's just part of what we're dealing with.
Mhm.
You
I
know,
found something interesting in one of the
yeah.
stores here. The stores here in New York. I wouldn't believe it. Lamb tongues.
Lamb tongues. How small are they?
Lamb- Um, I was looking at the package. They were frozen. I was looking at them. It looked to me like about 4 inches, maybe 4 or 5 inches. There was a like about there was like a it looks like maybe 8 of them in the package. And like I said, $22 a pound. So I looked at it, said, for $22 a pound, I'm not gonna buy this on a lark. just
Yeah.
just to taste it for that amount of money.
So when you were younger, when you were a kid and you were like, I guess also maybe in middle school, did you notice certain things about your parents and that your friends' parents, in a sense, we're looking back for that now? You realize they had like severe PTSD and they had their own trauma, but they at the time you were just reacting to what they were doing.
Exactly. I think that sums it up very, very well. Yeah.
So could you give me some examples of maybe your friends or your parents or grandparents?
Well, I told you about one time this friend of mine who her mother I don't know if her mother was in the hospital or out of town. Her mother wasn't home, and we were in high school. She was like 16, 17 years old, and she had just cleaned up the whole kitchen, and her father and her brother came in, made themselves a snack or something, and just left the mess out there on the table. And she came in and yelled at her father. She goes, "Wait a minute." She goes, "I just cleaned up the kitchen. This isn't fair to me." And she's in high school. She's got to study. She's got her work to do. And her father, instead of realizing, yeah, we should clean up after ourselves, it's not fair, he yelled at her, "Well, you're the woman of the house now. It's your responsibility to clean up after us,
Wow.
to clean up after the men, because she's the woman. She should clean up after the men."
Yeah,
I
that's
felt so sorry. At least I didn't have that in my house. My father, if he made himself a snack, I saw him many times cleaning up after himself and washing his own dishes or whatever. If it was after dinner time and he was just having a snack and nobody else was there, he would always clean up after himself.
so what about like maybe your grandparents and your again,
But I
like
was just I was remembering something else. I remember the same friend of mine. Her father owned a bar in downtown Baltimore, and his business got hit during the riots. It was really sad. He was so the poor man was he angry. I mean, here was a man who had served in the Navy during World War II, who had struggled, who finally was making it. He finally had a decent business. And this was the riots after the Martin Luther King assassination. I remember him sitting in the kitchen and just very sarcastically saying, like quoting Martin Luther King, he says, "I looked over the mountain and I saw the promised land." And he kept saying that over and over again.
so how did that make you feel?
It's a good question. Shoot, I'm trying to remember. Well, being a liberal at the time, I thought he was wrong, of course. I felt like a lot of liberals did. Oh yes, that this is payback time, and this is what happens when you oppress people for so long. And now, as a more mature adult, who's been a working adult, I mean, what's a teenager who basically is being supported by their parents for the most part. I mean, like Winston Churchill said, if you're not a liberal at 20, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative at 40, you have no brains or you have no head. Um, and I realized, now I feel sorry for him. Now I realized how he was so right to feel the way he did. It is upsetting to work so hard for something and to just have a crowd, a mob, senselessly just break into your business and just steal everything for no reason. I mean, he was just an innocent businessman that was trying to make a living for his family.
Do you think that maybe if the I'm trying to really think about this, to be honest, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you questions to get you talking and listen to what you have to say. And with things like this, where like, especially with today's standards, with everything that's going on in the news, with all these liberals trying to be pro-Palestinian and being pro-Hamas and being promoting this idea that resistance is justified. And it's very frustrating because I'm seeing it's getting more and more intense and more closer to where I live.
I think also right now there's a pushback that
yeah,
people are starting to realize, and I hope they're starting to realize, that there's never any excuse for, there's no excuse, there's no real excuse for violence. To be violent towards anybody just to quote unquote think that you're righting a wrong. You're not righting a wrong by being violent.
What made you realize that when you were younger? Because I feel like a lot of young people nowadays are very upset. They've been indoctrinated into these propaganda type of situations. They're finding more and more how much influence Russia and China have on American youth, not just with the colleges, but also with the social media. So it's very hard. So it's very hard to fight that. So when did you start fighting that ideology and realizing that maybe you were wrong?
When I graduated college and actually got out into that world, and was teaching in these depressed areas where in a lot of these depressed areas where people felt that that they were oppressed, yada yada, and realizing that whole negative philosophy, that it was bad. It didn't work. You're not gonna get ahead with that kind of mentality. You're not going to succeed in life.
So what about you? Did you ever have that mentality?
Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, when I was in high school and college, yeah, I had that mentality.
So
and then I realized I had to stop blaming others and just go ahead and do and succeed on my own.
Okay. And
just because we were the poorest family in the neighborhood didn't mean that I had to. That didn't mean that I couldn't succeed.
do you feel like you've succeeded, like now in your lifetime?
Yeah, but thank God.
But what?
Thank God. I think money's not everything, and I think Baruch Hashem. I think the way Kanai that you and your brothers and sisters turned out was terrific.
Awesome.
You're all Kanai, you're all good, hardworking, honest people.
Good.
And that's what is so very important.
Yeah.
And you're all decent. You're all very decent human beings. You all are sensitive, caring people. And you're also all of you have ambition.
So
and you're all very independent. You have ambition, you're independent, and none of you are lazy.
So I guess in that case, then, when it comes to the laziness, were you ever lazy growing up?
No, I wasn't lazy because I realized that meant dollars and cents. My parents couldn't give me everything, especially as a teenager. So if I wanted something, I had to work for it. I had to actually get a job and work for it. And I did very well with babysitting. I was always babysitting. I was a very popular babysitter in our neighborhood.
How much would you get paid back in the day?
You wouldn't. But I tell you how much. Would you believe my Would you believe? I think my first babysitting job. I think I was like 11 or 12 when I got hired for my first babysitting job. I think I got, if I'm not mistaken, 50 cents an hour.
50 cents an hour. Wow.
And then later on, it went up to 75 cents an hour. Later on, $1.50 an hour.
Did you ever save your
I'm not kidding. That's what those were the standard. You think about inflation over the years. That was during the 60s and during the 60s, early 70s. Yeah.
did did you ever save your money for something that you really wanted?
Oh, you bet. I said, I always save my money.
Yeah.
I saved
but-
my money a lot. And as a matter of fact, there was an opportunity that came up for me when I think I was in 10th grade to
Mhm.
go to this string conference that was being held at Westchester College in Westchester, Pennsylvania. And it was string instrument teachers that were concert artists from like all over the United States. And they had come there for this massive, it was a 2-week program where they were working with different students from different string instruments. There were kids that were like my violin, viola, cello, bass violin, and all these amazing teachers came there for this 2-week, like total music saturation. The head of the program, when we got there, there was a presentation, of course, an introductory presentation, orientation, where he said, "You young people, for the next 2 weeks, are going to be literally saturated with every type of amazing musical experience that we can give you." And it was I was in the orchestra, of course. We had the orchestra that performed. There were also the faculty that performed for us. There was a very interesting lecture on medieval and Renaissance stringed instruments that was delivered to us by a noted historian who had the actual instruments there and performed on them and showed us how they were played. Anyway, to go to this program required, of course, money to enroll in it. And my parents didn't have the money, but I did. I had all this money I'd saved up from babysitting. And so I went.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. And it was the first type of educational experience I had had where from the moment we got there to the moment we left, it was nothing but praise, 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 nothing but positive reinforcement every step of the way. No criticism, totally positive reinforcement. And boy, did it show. I mean, the playing, I know about my playing, the playing of everyone else around me. I mean, our playing really in those 2 weeks improved tremendously. And just the atmosphere being there, it was the first time I'd been in an educational atmosphere that was so positive. It was like, wow. It was like a breath of fresh air to actually be someplace where you weren't, yelled at or put down or, just given a bad grade. Like I said, and, it was wonderful to be in that kind of in that environment.
Did you ever implement that with raising your kids or teaching your students?
Yes and no. When I first started giving private lessons, I wasn't so positively oriented. And even now, like I try to be as positive as I can, but there are times when, like with some students where after a lesson, I'll walk away and say, I shouldn't have been so hard on that kid. I should have I should have, when she wasn't getting, I should have like backed off and taken whatever I was trying to give over to her more step. I should have broken it down to something easier that she could grasp and then build on that. Like this one girl, she'd been studying for me for a while and was having trouble reading notes. And so I said to her, you know, what note is this? And she was just, grasping it, like I said to her, you're just guessing, you're not really looking at that. So let's look at the note and let's see how we can tell that this note is really a C. Now notice it's got a line through it, and notice where it's located. Is it on the staff or is it off the staff? It's off the staff, it's got a line through it. Okay, so that's a C. And then that quick, she forgot. So then I said to her, so I asked her what note is this? She goes, a C. I said, well, how do we know what's a C? And no, actually, she said the wrong note. She said it's a D. So I said, well, what makes you think it's a D? And she couldn't answer me. And so that's when what I should have done was I should have taken out a piece of paper and actually drawn a D, like the note D for her on the staff. And so now you draw yours next to mine. Okay, now what can you tell me about? I should have backed off and gotten a little simpler.
Are you usually hard on yourself?
People tell me I am. Would you believe there was this family I was doing nanny work for, you might say. It was a family that I was helping. I was helping this woman while she was working. She hired me as basically a nanny for during the day while she was away at work. And that night she had a parent-teacher conference, whatever. She couldn't come home. So I gave the kids dinner and put them to bed. So this little kid, her kids were brilliant, amazingly brilliant kids. One of her younger children, who was 6 years old, I forgot what happened, how it came up, but I was reading him a book. I forgot what I was doing, maybe reading him a book, maybe tucking him in, whatever. And he says to me, why are you so hard on yourself? Imagine a 6-year-old kid.
What were you doing?
That insight.
What were you doing that would make him think that?
I think I was saying, oh, I forgot that I should have done this with your dinner. I should have done that. Oh, I'm so sorry. I should have done this. I should have done, maybe I forgot, I need to clean, maybe I should have cleaned up. I was saying that maybe I should have done this or done that or whatever, and that's when he said to me, why are you so hard on yourself? But can you imagine a little 6-year-old kid to have that insight?
What?
I said to him, you're right.
Were your parents ever critical of you? What was the average thing they would always complain to you about?
Everything.
Give me one quick example. You're running out of time.
The way I talk.
The way you walk?
The way I eat. The way I breathe. The way I cough. Because I had asthma and they didn't realize it.
You were just a constant nuisance.
And I think that generation was very quick because your father had the same thing with his parents.
Yeah?
Only he had it worse than I did.
What do you mean?
At least, well, my mother, in a way, at least she would, if I had a problem, at least I could go to her. And she would, for the most part, be pretty understanding. At least I could talk to her and she'd be pretty understanding. There were some times I felt badly about something I did or something I should have done, whatever. And I thought, I really better tell her. And I would tell her, about something that I did that I felt badly about, whatever. And she would point out to me, well, she goes, I can understand why you did that. She was a little more of the understanding type, but your poor father, his parents were not at all understanding. Period. Finished of anything.
Period. Finished. Oh,
but that was the mentality of the time from that generation. It was like they life was tough. And they needed to raise you to be tough.
Raised to be tough.
Yeah, raised to be tough. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much, Ima, for everything. I appreciate it.
Did I raise you to be tough?
Yeah, you did actually.
Boy.
Yeah, in a good way, in a healthy way. in a healthy way, that or repressed memories. I can't really tell.
Subliminal.
Subliminal tough, exactly. Subliminal messages. But yeah, it was good. I Thank you for listening to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. Please comment and subscribe on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and Instagram. I would greatly appreciate it, and my mother would too.